Well, the South African Policing Union and the National Union of Public Service and Allied Workers have also called off their strikes today. Let's speak now to Sapu's national spokesperson, Lesiba Thobakgale. Lesiba, very good evening to you. Tell us more about what's now been agreed and led to this breakthrough.
Thank you, Thembekile. Greetings to yourself and to your viewers back at home. After a while, for a long time, we have had this dispute about the 10% salary demand for the year 2022-2023, whereby we saw the enforcement of 3% salary increase by the employer, which we were clearly not happy about. Thus, we lodged disputes related to that. And as we are speaking now, that on the 8th of March, which was last week, we served the DPSA with a notice to strike. And over the weekend, we had a facilitation process which was initiated by the PSCBC. Because we are open to social dialogue, we have not closed our doors. We are open to speaking with government. We participated in that facilitation, which indeed it was not an easy walk on the park. It was difficult to reach a settlement agreement that we have. We've reached that settlement agreement yesterday, Thembekile, whereby there's a critical clause inside there which says that we are going to augment when we go into the 2023-2024 wage negotiations, which are ongoing, and we are going to be participating from now because we have dealt with the 2022-2023. And then that clause clearly speaking about the augmentation, that there is an amount, there is a percentage that will be considered stemming from the 2022-2023, where government imposed the 3%. So currently we know that the employer had tabled 4.7 in this current wage negotiations. And as we speak, because of the action that we have taken, and even the notice that we have served that we will be going on the street on Friday, they've since increased that offer to 7%. And on top of that, that augmentation, it is still going to be applicable, meaning that in these negotiations, we are still going to agree with government that except the 7% that you have placed as an offer, how much percentage are we going to agree with one another in order to deal with what we have agreed upon in the settlement agreement? And we see it as being progressive because remember that 3% enforcement, we wouldn't have had anything if we never took this tough stand that we have taken, as we have seen with unions like NEHAU, have taken it and we were supporting them, we were with them, with having our officials with them on the picket lines.
So if you're saying government has put an offer of 7% on the table, but you're still going to fight on through augmentation, is the augmentation going to be a request for an additional 3%, which would ultimately still get you to the 10% that led to the action, the industrial action of just the last week by NEHAU members?
Thembekile, a percentage there, it is what will form part of the negotiations as they will be ongoing. We cannot now tie the issue of a percentage, but for us, what we see as a victory is that the employer, whom through the acting minister of the DPSA, Thula Singcese, had said that they closed 2022-2023, we forced them to reopen it because through a settlement agreement, now we are going to negotiate now and agree on what percentage are we putting as a form of augmentation to the current 7% wage offer that is there on the table.
And when would the 7% reflect on your members' pay slips?
So far, negotiations are ongoing, Thembekile. We have started, remember we were not going to the PSCBC. There were other unions that said, well, now they are done with, they've moved on from the last year's dispute. It's only the unions that were pursuing, and, us, Sapu, Newzroom, and, NEHAU and other unions. Remember the three, Sapu, Newzroom, and NEHAU, we are the ones that served the employer with a notice to strike. So we are not done with those negotiations. We are not there on the negotiation table. We only started to be on the negotiation table today. So negotiations are ongoing, where we are going to agree now to say, employer, on top of your 7%, how do we then augment so that we can finalize and conclude a resolution in the PSCBC, which will then, it has to ensure that the buying power of workers, which was taken away from them for so many years since the start of COVID, since the 2020 where employer reneged from the 2018 agreement to see how can we then restore buying power to public servants. And on top of that, Thembekile, it is good for us to also mention that in the sector of the police, today, Sapu signed an agreement that seeks now to improve the service allowance, which was 400 from 2001 up until now. We increased it with 300 rand, backdated to April 2022, which is a step in the right direction. Our demand is still 1,500, and we also have a clause there, Thembekile, that is saying that we will renegotiate as of April, because the new financial year is starting, we'll renegotiate it to push it to the 1,500. But to us, it is a step in the right direction. Our members in the police will also benefit from that dispensation.
Would any of this, would any of this progress have been achieved, is what I'm trying to ask you, without the Nahau-led strike last week?
We have joined hands. Lesiba, the notices of strike that were served by the three unions, Nehau, ourselves, the Sapo, and also Newzroom, because we have a working together with Newzroom agreement, and also joining hands with other unions as well, which those who were pursuing the very same 2022-2023, that on its own is what put pressure, because when Nehau, they were on the picket line, we were with them. These unions that I've mentioned, we were with them on the picket line. Clearly, government wouldn't have afforded to see another further strike on top of what Nehau has started. So the hands that were joined as the unions that were pursuing the dispute really indeed put pressure on the employer. That's why even before we could go back to the bargaining table, employer improved their offer from 4.7 to 7%. This is clear that pressure was felt and government indeed had to succumb. They had no choice.
So they will definitely pay the 7%?
The 7%, it is an offer for now. Remember, we said, Thembekile, that negotiations are still ongoing. We still have to conclude an agreement. We still have, an agreement still has to be concluded. And we will only conclude that agreement after we have dealt with the issue of the augmentation, to say what percentage are we agreeing upon. Is it the difference of the 10% as they pay the 3%? That is subject to negotiations. That is what we will be dealing with up until where then we conclude an agreement, and then payment then will reflect in the payslips of our members and straight into their bank accounts. But we are not going to succumb to anything, because we had to protect the collective bargaining in the public sector, because government is taking it for granted. They are just here to destroy collective bargaining. So the actions that we were taking as united unions clearly are there to protect, and clearly protected collective bargaining in the PSCs.
Very quickly then, Lesiba, will the demonstrations, or the strike, planned for this coming Friday, the 17th, will that still go ahead? And lastly, will any of you be taking part or supporting the EFF-led shutdown planned for Monday?
Thembekile, we have called off the strike as Sapu and so as we have stated in our media statement. We are no longer going to embark on the strike that we planned for the 17th of March. And remember, we are an independent union. We fight our battles on our own. If we are not on our own, we join hands with other unions. We do not get involved in political issues or political matches that political parties happen to be involved in. We let them do what they do if they feel they want to do it, exercising their constitutional rights. And even us, when we want to exercise our constitutional right, we will exercise it in accordingly joined hands with other labor trade unions, more especially those that are organizing in the public sector. Bargaining Council, as we have seen, we joined hands with Genosa, we joined hands with even other unions like Nehau. As you know, I cannot just mention the whole list, but we joined hands because we saw that our unity is the one that will assist us to persist and to win against this government. But we remain independent. As you know, Sapu is an independent union, and we will not be involved with any political party.
Lesiba Thobakgale from the South African Policing Union. Good to have your time. Thank you.